in the 1880s at a Methodist conference for ministers in Indiana. Picture the scene. In the audience were Methodist ministers, their wives and children. The speaker was a professor from a well-known university. And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, as I stand before you today, I see great change in our world. In fact, I see man flying." As he paused, a man jumped up from his seat and yelled, "Heresy, heresy! The Bible states that flight is reserved for the angels. I'll hear no more of this." And he grabbed his two boys, Wilbur and Orville, and rushed from that meeting. Absolutely true. It probably wasn't until 1903 that old man Wright began to look ahead, when the boys flew over the house. Because you see, it was at Kitty Hawk in 1903 that the Wright brothers, for 12 seconds, a distance of 120 feet in a 40-foot span aircraft, took off and set the world flying. How many of you have ever flown in a 747? Has anybody flown in a 747? 3 or 4 of you? Today, that first flight at Kitty Hawk of the Wright brothers could be performed inside the passenger compartment of a 747. Inside the passenger compartment of a 747. And that was only 2 generations ago. Rapid, rapid change. What are you doing to keep up? Now, you know, management has not progressed and moved as fast as flight. But it has progressed. And we're going to spend some time looking at some of the most advanced, most effective ways to deal with people. Before we go any further, though, I should introduce to you a couple of people that are important to me. Lewis Moore is over here. Lewis Moore is a good friend of mine and an associate, and also a management trainer and consultant, and in my estimation, one of the most effective management consultants in this part of the country. And I'm glad to have Lewis with us today. Also, I have my very able and dedicated assistant, Pat. Pat is also sometimes very bossy, very critical. She's also my wife, Pat Rogers, and glad that she could come out and help me this morning. Okay, let's get underway. I have a question for you. Give me some examples of things that your people do that they shouldn't do, or some examples of some things that your people do wrong. I want you all just to, and we'll make a list of them up here on the board. What are some things your people do wrong on the job? Things they're not supposed to do. Waste time. Okay, can you give me, it's a good one, can you give me an example of how they waste time? Asking questions they already know the answer to. Okay. Okay, what else? What are some other things that your people do that they're not supposed to, or things that they do wrong? What else? Okay, away from the workstation. Off the job, talking to others. How can we say that briefly? And what else? What else are your people doing that they're not supposed to? Okay. Excessive breaks. What else? Poor quality. Mm-hmm. Okay. What might they be doing, you think, that might cause them to create poor quality? Not concentrating. Okay. Okay. Not attending to the job. What else? Good one. What else? Just all the problems you have? It's going to be an easy day. What else?
Late out of work.
Okay. Excessive, let's say absenteeism. Okay, good one. What else?
Same line, tardiness.
Tardiness. Okay, anybody got any more? We could sure add to this list. Anybody think of any more you want to add? Suppose that we could come up with some way that would enable you to handle all of these problems. Would it be useful to you? I submit to you that if you are dealing with any of these problems, you don't have to. Or at least if you're struggling with them. There is a way, there are ways to handle these types of performance problems in a very effective way. And that's what we're going to work on. So take a look at those, and we're going to be, we'll choose one as an example, and the techniques that we'll be presenting can be used on all these others, or on most of these others. And one thing we'll do is we will sort of crystallize how we should think about performance problems so that we understand and know exactly what they are. We'll handle that later, but these are some good items that we can think about working with. These are the problems you have at work, right? These are what we should be working. Anybody want to add anything to this?
Setting our goals to achieve that.
Okay. You want them to set higher goals. Okay. What are they doing that makes you feel they should set higher goals? Let's see if we can dig into that just a little.
Well, probably those
Some of these things here.
Yeah, those things there.
So you feel like if they could set higher goals, it might help increase their performance. Okay. Now that is a method perhaps that you could use to help solve some of these problems. And it's a good point. Okay. What?
Sometimes there's just an attitude on some people's parts. It's just, they just don't really care. It's just a job. That's what they care about. It's a job. They don't care about how well they do it. Or they're,
Ooh.
fast though,
Do their fast folk.
or whatever.
Okay. That is an extremely interesting one. And we're going to deal with that one at length. And it's something that we all have talked about as managers. And the key word that you mentioned was attitude, right? Anybody in here has not ever complained about certain attitudes of your employees? Anybody here has not done that? I've done it many times. And we're going to talk about that later. That one is too good to even put up here. We'll use it later. I'm glad you mentioned that one. Okay. Do you think it would be interesting to see what some other managers have said when asked this very same question? There was a national survey that was done in which this question was asked. And it was asked of 4,000 managers across the United States. Would you like to see what some other managers had to say? They thought were some of the critical things their people were doing that they weren't supposed to do. Well, we're going to let you look at that, but we're going to let you look at it later. I don't want to bias your opinion at this point. Just have those in mind. We'll come back to that sheet later. I'm going to ask you another question. Why do you suppose your people don't do what they're supposed to sometimes? Why do you think your people don't do what they're supposed to do? Or do what they shouldn't, or don't do what they should? What's that?
Lack of desire.
Lack of, okay, poor motivation. Okay. Okay. What else?
We don't communicate.
Who said that? Bill. Poor communications. Good. What else?
The boss doesn't care.
Boss doesn't care.
Lack of respect.
I heard it before.
Lack of respect.
Lack of respect. All right. What else?
Personal problem.
Problem
goes on the job.
Good one. What else?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. What else? It's a good one. Somebody else. Why your people don't do what they're supposed to? What are some of the reasons? To get attention. Another one. Anybody? Why don't they do what they're supposed to? Don't know how. Good. Anybody have another one you want to add to that?
Not held accountable.
Not held accountable. Any more?
Don't know what is expected.
Don't know what's expected. Good. Would you like to see what the other manager said when asked this same question? Get up. In your mind, what you have said. Poor motivation, poor communications, boss doesn't care, lack of respect, personal problems, poor peer pressure to get attention, they don't know how, not held accountable, don't know what is expected. Let's see what the other managers across the country said when asked this same question. They don't know what they're supposed to do, is number one. You know, over 90% of the time when this question is asked, managers give this as either the first or second reason that their people don't do what they're supposed to. They don't know what they're supposed to do. They don't know how to do it. We mentioned that, didn't we? They don't know why they should. There are obstacles beyond their control. Sometimes that happens, doesn't it? We didn't mention that one. They don't think it'll work. You ever had anybody tell you that? I'll do it, but it won't work. They think their way is better. They're not motivated. They have a poor attitude. Personally incapable of doing it. Some sort of personal limitations. We mentioned that, didn't we? Not enough time. They're working on the wrong priority items. They think they are doing it. Now, why could they think that? Because they're not getting feedback, right? If you agree with me, nod your head like that. That lets me know you're awake. That's appreciated, yeah. Okay? Poor management. Personal problems. If you notice, though, now we said this usually comes up first or second over 90% of the time. But surprise. Whenever managers are actually dealing with a specific performance problem on the job, they rarely consider this as a possibility. Interesting. Look at that list again. There's only about 3 of them, which is something that's really wrong with the employee or the worker. Isn't that right? Look at numbers 7, 8, and 13. Not motivated, 7, 8, personally incapable, and 13, some personal problems at home. What about the rest of them, though? What about the rest of them? Yeah. Yeah. Managers' problems. And most of them could be put under the umbrella word of poor communications, right? If we're going to be able to help you improve the performance of your people, we're going to have to deal with those things on that list, aren't we? Let's do that right now. The first skill that I want you to master is performance analysis. Performance analysis. That's the first skill we're going to work with. you'll turn in your participant book, you'll find the appropriate sheet there somewhere. I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Before we do that, I want to set the stage a little bit. I want to set the stage. In fact, there's two things I need to do before we actually get into that skill. First of all, I want you to grasp some important principles of management, a rationale for management that will be a basis of strength and guidance as you apply these skills. A rationale for management. And let's do that now. A number of steps I want to point out. Everybody see that? Can everybody see me? Okay. What is management? Somebody just define it. You've read it in textbooks. You've heard it in lectures. What's a good definition of management? Anybody? Okay, who said that? Ernie? Management is getting things done through others. This is a textbook definition. You see it everywhere. Anybody disagree with that? Anybody want to comment on it? Management is getting things done through others. You know, there was a national survey that was done some time ago, and the purpose for that survey was to take a look at formal performance appraisals that were done across the country. And one of the things they wanted to find out was, what are organizations throughout the country asking of their managers? In other words, as they measured the success of their managers, what particular skills were they looking at? Now, this survey was nationwide. They wanted to find out what were those skills that everybody was measuring, everybody thought was important to be a successful manager. How many skills do you think they found that everybody was measuring? Anybody want to take a wild guess? How many would you think that everybody was measuring? None. They couldn't come up with any particular measurement of successful management that everybody that participated in the survey was using. None. Now, they did the same type of a survey for sales skills, and they found several that everybody was measuring, but not so with managers. You know, Peter Drucker, any of you ever heard of Peter Drucker? He's called Mr. Manager. Have you ever heard of him? Peter Drucker said that about management. He said it's the only profession for which there is no formal vehicle by which we pass on the skills from the older generation to the younger. He said it's the only profession in which the members enter into it with little idea of what's required of them and what they should know and how they should perform. You ever thought about that? Lawyers pass the bar exam. Doctors have to go through internships. All kinds of professions have apprenticeship programs. But managers? How do we become successful managers? How do we? What's the best teacher that we have? Trial and error, yes, experience. And it is the best. But there are problems with it. But can you understand how we might be in a bit of a difficult situation if nobody even agrees as to what is important for a manager to know? One problem, I think, is the way we become managers. One day the boss calls you in. See if it didn't happen to you this way. He calls you in and he says, Bill, you've been with us now 5 years. You've really done a good job. You're dependable. You get along well with the people. You have the technical expertise, and we appreciate it. And you know Jim is leaving us. So Monday morning, if you will, you come in. You'll be the new supervisor. So Monday morning, you're the new supervisor. What do? You just do what comes natural, don't you? You say, well, I'm here. I'm just going to do what comes natural. I'll do the best I can, and I'll be conscientious, and I'll learn as I go. We all had to do that. Some things that you do work very well. Others, not so well. So through trial and error, you develop some management expertise. Is that the way it happened to most of us? Peter Drucker says, that's ridiculous. He says, that's crazy way. He said the most important profession in the entire world is management. In fact, he said the destiny of the species depends upon the profession of management. What does that mean? That means if we don't have good management in this world, the entire system could collapse. And yet we have no system for transferring skills from one generation to the next. Well, let me ask you a question. What do you get paid for? What do you get paid for? Performance. Okay. Whose performance? Aha. Bill said that you get paid, or he gets paid, for his people's performance. Do you agree with that? Is he right? I think of an illustration of this, and I have to confess, I stole it from someone whose name is Ferdinand F. Fournier. Ferdinand F. Fournier developed some of the skills that we're going to be studying. And in fact, you will be introduced to him and you will meet him through a film later on. But he gives an example like this to make us point. Where is a good, most prestigious golf course in the area? What is one of your most prestigious places that people play golf? Huh? Okay, I don't mean a tournament now. I mean a course where people around here go and play. When you golf. Huh? Where do you play, Bill?
I think it's the best course around, Red Fox.
Red Fox, okay. All right, let's suppose, Bill, that one day you see me out at Red Fox. And I've got one of those fancy golf carts. You know, in fact, mine is the ultimate in the golf cart. It's enclosed, you know, stereo, air conditioning, floor in the floor. I mean, it's really. And I got $100 golf shoes and tailor-made slacks. And I got one of those shirts, you know, with the alligator on it. Very expensive golf clubs. Not only that, you notice me as I approach the tee with an air of confidence, as I address the ball. Now, you notice the smooth follow through. And also, as we're in the clubhouse chatting, you hear me relate to you how I have studied the sport of golf under the greatest teachers of history of the sport. I can cite to you all the records and all the theories on golf. But you also happen to see, Bill, my scorecard. And for 18 holes, for 9 holes, my score is 190 holes. Now, is it likely you're going to come up to me and say, Don, you're a heck of a golfer. You're really a fine golfer. Is it likely you're going to do that? Why? You're one of these guys that looks at the score? Not yours. The score is what counts. Another situation. Let's say, Bill, that you saw me again. This time I'm at work. I'm a supervisor. I got on a neat tailor-made suit, Johnny Carson suit. I got on one of those plastic things in my pocket, I got a lot of pens and pencils in there. And I carry myself with an air of confidence. Not only that, my reports are always on time. My budget is always to the penny. And yet, my people have the lowest productivity and performance of anybody in the organization. Now, is it likely, Bill, that you will come to me and say, Don, you are an outstanding manager? Is it likely? But Bill, I know all the theories and philosophies of management. I can cite to you everything that Maslow ever said. Why wouldn't you say I'm a good manager? Your score, fellas, is the performance of your people. That's what counts for you as a manager. Now, I'm sure that you have other responsibilities that come your way. But when the decisions are made up there by those that are in a position in the hierarchy to make them that are important to you, they make those decisions based on your score. You're measured by that. What is your score? It's the performance of your people. What do you get paid for? Looking at number 3, I got these in the wrong order. You get paid for, then, what your subordinates do. Simple. Obvious. But often forgotten. Well, if you get paid for what your subordinates do, would you also agree with rule number 2? Look at that one. You need your subordinates as much as they need you. You're away from work today. How is that going to affect performance in your area? Will it go up, down, stay the same? What do you think?
Same.
Think it'll stay the same? Anybody think theirs will go down? Let me ask you another question. Suppose all of your people were away from work today and you were there.
That hasn't made.
You would. Why would you have it made? Huh?
Well, I wouldn't have a job.
You wouldn't have a job. You'd have it made if you don't have a job. Huh?
One day.
For one day, yeah. But how would your score be affected? How would your performance be affected if all your people are not there? Yeah. Our purpose at ARA, as a manager is to increase the performance of our people. Our people are more important than we are in terms of, you know, the higher you are up the management ladder, the less your absence is missed and the less perform. The president of an organization, the CEO, can go away for 6 months vacation and nobody would miss him. Well, some of them they wouldn't. But performance right there where the work is actually done would continue on, wouldn't it? Do everything in your power to help your subordinates be as successful as possible. Spend your time helping your people be successful. How are you spending your time at work? You got some stars out there, and you got some normal people, don't you? Suppose you were a coach, and let's say you had 5 people on your track team. Now, what's your objective? You're the coach, you got 5, it's a track team, and you have 5 people out there, and what do you want to happen? You want to win races, right? You want, okay. So the race is on. What are you going to be doing? You're going to be over here at the finish line? Hey, congratulations, boy, you did a fine job. Shake his hand, give him a trophy, congratulate him, pat him on the back. Good job. Your star came in, he won the race again. Part of management, isn't it? Motivating, congratulating, rewarding, reinforcing. Wait a minute.
When he starts,
Hey.
get him going, motivate.
Okay. So you should be, what did he say? Say it again.
Should be there, when
Where
he
it
starts.
starts. Yeah. If you're the coach, your influence is felt over there at the beginning, right? You should be busy working, coaching during the race, while things are happening. We don't need anybody over here as a scorekeeper. Somebody will take care of that, handing out the rewards. You need to be involved during the race. Not only that, what about that guy that's on your team who finished 19th this time? Last time he finished 20th. What about him? He's improved. He's improved. You need to give him attention. You need to work with him. You need to try to get him up to 18, to 17, to 15. Too oftentimes, I think, we spend too much time with our stars and not enough time with all our other people. Do everything you can in your power to help your subordinates succeed. How do you measure your success? You succeed only when they do. Rule number 6, accept full responsibility not only for your own actions, but accept the responsibility for the failures and successes of your people. Failures and successes of your people. See, one thing about managing is not doing what comes natural. You don't do what comes natural. Managing is things that you do, and they can be learned and improved upon. But if you're out there doing what comes natural, you'll find yourself in trouble. In fact, there's a certain amount of what's the word? Showmanship almost and performance involved with good management. You have to be consistent with your people. Suppose you came in to work and you had this number of people working for you, and you started over here with Ernest, and suppose you said 15 random words to Ernest as you came in that morning. And then you said something to Tommy and to the others, Bill and all around. And by the time you got over here to this Bill, pretty well had it, right? Maybe a nod is all Bill got. All right. Suppose I ask you, then, what did you tell Ernest? What did you say to Ernest this morning? What, you think I'm some kind of computer? I got to remember everything I say to all of my people? Ridiculous. Wait a minute. Ernest remembers. Ernest remembers what you said. You see, he only has one boss. And all the words that fall out of your lips are important to Ernest. He remembers. He's got all day to say. I wonder what he meant by that. Or did he smile when he said that? And he will think about what you told him. You got to be consistent. There's a certain, you may not feel that good. You may be tired, worn out by the time you get over here to Bill. But you got to perform as a manager. There's performance is involved. Almost some showmanship there. You know, it reminds me of an example of that. One time, not too long ago, I had to be on the evening news on television. And I went up to the studio there, and I was scared to death. You know, I had all my notes all laid out there, and they had, what's the guy who gives the news? Been there for so many years at Channel 4. No, the one that's beginning to recede here. He's been there for years. What's his name? Who? No, not Stowe Hall. Stowe Hall. Right. Old Stowe Hall was there, and they had the weatherman and the sports. I forget who he was, but old Stowe had his feet propped up on the desk. He had his tie pulled back, and he was telling jokes, one right after the other. And I'm sitting over here just nervous as I can be. And someone says through the intercom, 10 seconds. Stowe still got his feet on the table, still got his tie back, telling that joke. I'd snapped to attention, took one last look at my notes, and just at the last second, Stowe's feet come down off the table. He pulls his tie up, the light comes on, and Stowe is standing there giving the news like a professional, just like he'd been practicing all day. Showmanship, performance. There's a certain amount of that involved in managing. It's not doing what comes natural all the time. You say, oh, you mean I got to be phony, I got to be fake, I got to pretend? No. No. But you do have to restrict some of your natural inclinations and desires. And you have to conform in a consistent way to good management principles, which do not necessarily come natural. Okay. We're going to demonstrate something that I think is essential to understanding good management. And it's something that you've heard many times. Anytime you go to a conference or a workshop, eventually the subject comes up of motivation. And we're going to look at we're going to cut a slice through the apple, so to speak, and pull it out and examine one part of that subject. And we'll do it through the means of an exercise. And we'll do that after we take about a 10-minute break. So let's take a 10-minute break. I'm going to pass out this handout, and if you will, just look at the front page. Don't Just stay on that first page. Don't turn back, if you will. We'll get underway in a minute. Okay. One of the major and most important principles in management, of course, is that of motivation. It's a very complicated topic and one that we certainly can't hope to cover here today. But the basic principle of motivation is simple, and that is behavior that is rewarded tends to be repeated. Of course, the complication comes in identifying exactly what is rewarding, what are the rewards. To show how complicated that can become and how difficult, we have listed here on this sheet, first sheet, some motivational factors. Now what I want you to do is go through that list and rank those factors according to their importance as motivators to you. Those factors that are most motivating to you in a work situation. Whatever you think is the most important factor, put that by blank number 1. Put the letter of that factor by blank number 1. And so on until you have ranked them all the way down from the most important to the least important. These are factors that are motivating factors that are important to you. Okay, go ahead and do that. Auditorium setting, but just sort of gravitate over to one area. You don't have to just shuffle around. And we want a group here, a group back there, and same way over here. Front group, back. 4 groups of about 7. In fact, there should be 7 in each group. Go ahead and do that now and get set up. You might want to come to group 1. You might want to just come right down here on the front. We'll call you group 1. Group 2 back there. Group 3. And then group 4 can, maybe you could gather right here if you like. Okay, you fellas right there, if you will, just come to the front. Come right down here. We need 7 of you. Okay. All right, give me your attention now, if you will. Turn to, you have rated those factors that are important to you on worksheet 7. Turn to worksheet 8. You'll find on worksheet 8 those same factors listed again. However, your task is different this time. You will be listing the factors that you believe, motivating factors that you believe, are most important to your workers. Most important to your workers. The same factors you looked at before. But this time we want you to do this as a group. See if you can't get a consensus of opinion among your group members as to how these factors should be ranked. So you just fall in and begin to discuss it and see if you can come to an agreement. spokesman for each group, right? This is group 1 here, group 2, 3, and 4. Now, we're only going to consider the first 5 factors. So, Group 1 spokesman, let's hear from you. What were the first 5 factors that Group 1 decided were the most important motivators to your workers?
Number 1 was G, job security.
Okay, number 1 was G, job security. All right?
Number 2 was C, good pay.
C, good pay.
Number 3 was H, pleasant relationship with coworkers.
H, pleasant relationships with co-workers.
Number 4 was A, good physical working conditions.
A, good physical working conditions.
Number 5 was E, company benefits.
Number 5 is E, company benefits. Okay?
We finished, you want to go ahead?
Now that's the first 5 will be good enough.
Okay.
That's all we're going to work with. So you feel like that's it, number 1. Okay. Number 2.
Number 1 was C.
Good pay. Okay.
Number 2 was G, job security.
Job security, number
3 was E, company benefits.
2. E, company benefits.
4 was I, incentive pay.
Incentive pay. Okay.
5 was L, opportunity for advancement.
F, opportunity for advancement. All right. Group 3, what do you think? G is job security. Pleasant relationship with coworkers. Good physical working conditions. Good pay. E, company benefits. Okay? What about group 4? You got the right answers for us?
Jim,
Close to the same. C, G,
Good pay, good physical working conditions.
A,
A is, what's A?
working.
good physical working
Oh, I'm
conditions.
sorry. What's,
H,
what's G?
Job
Job security. And H
H,
is what?
pleasant relationship.
Pleasant relationships, all right.
And I,
Incentive pay. Okay. Well, there's some similarities there for sure. You seem to be sort of thinking the same way. Let's find out who's got the right answers. Everybody that thinks group number 1 answers are the right ones, raise your hand. You think group? Okay, right. Those that think group number 2's answers are correct, and let's see a show of hands. Okay, number 3. How many think number 3? Thank you. And number 4? Okay, well, it looks like we have a tie here. How are we going to deal with this?
group number 2 didn't even look like they were sure of themselves.
Well, okay. Of course, the answer is there are no right answers, but there are some principles involved. Direct factors can be important at different times. Turn to the next worksheet and let's see what all of this means. First of all, we can divide these factors into two basic groups. Two basic groups of factors are here. Let's look at the first group. These are known as the satisfiers. The satisfiers. They are listed for you on the top of worksheet number 9. You see them? Look at them. What are they? These are the satisfiers. Poor physical, when satisfiers are not present in the work environment, the results tend to be the following. Low morale, high turnover, absenteeism, grievances, and lower production. What are these satisfiers? Poor working conditions. I'm sorry. The satisfiers are the working conditions. If the working conditions are poor, then the conditions I mentioned would result. Or if the pay is low, or if the organization has few company benefits, or little job security, or unpleasant relationships with workers. These are the satisfiers. And if satisfiers are not present in an organization in a positive way, you can get very predictable results. And those results are just as we mentioned. Not too surprising, right? Now, when the satisfiers are present in a positive nature, you will have what? Look at it. What will be the conditions that will exist if satisfiers are present in a positive way? High morale, lower turnover, less absenteeism, fewer grievances. But what is absent from that list? Anybody? Huh? Higher production is not mentioned, is it? Turn over to the next page and let's see how production fits into this. Worksheet number 10. You see the other list of factors that were in that group are known as the motivators. What are the motivators? By the way, notice the first sentence on that sheet. What does it say? Motivators become important only after satisfiers have been met. It's a critical point. So then the basis for good relationships is the satisfiers. They must occur first. Typically, there are exceptions. Then the motivators become important. What are the motivators? Look at them. Opportunity to advance. That's right. Opportunity to participate in those matters that are important to the employees. Opportunity, or rather the challenge of a difficult task. It's a motivator. Incentive pay is a motivator for extra performance and interesting non-routine tasks. These are the motivators. Now, in the early days of social research and industry, most people assumed that if you just gave people a good day's pay for a good day's work and gave them some reasonable working conditions, they would in turn give you high performance. But we know today that is not the case, don't we? That is not the case. Can you motivate someone to increase their performance by providing them with good, solid fringe benefits, good pay, good relationships with their co-workers, and so forth? Suppose that you were part of a top management group, and you came together and you met, and the objective of the meeting was, what can we do to increase productivity? Suppose one member suggested, why don't we give everybody a 15% raise? How many of you believe, well, let me ask you, what effect do you think that 15% raise would have on productivity? What do you think it would do? Hmm? You don't think it'd do very much? Somebody said for a while. Typically, here's what you get. If productivity is running about like that, a raise is announced, the anticipation of that raise will cause this to happen to the productivity curve. Let's say that a raise occurs right here. Then what happens?
Goes back down to where it was.
Yeah. Goes right back. You can't get any lasting effect on productivity then by providing more money. You agree to that? You do? Well, what do you think about the motivators and the satisfiers? Anybody have any questions about them at this point? What do you think about them? All right, let's see how we did. I want you to go back now to worksheet number 7, the first worksheet, and count the number of motivators that you had in there for yourself among the first 5 factors that you listed. The first 5 most important factors, look in there and see how many of those were motivators. Where are the motivators? They're on worksheet 10. So have your thumb on worksheet 10, refer back to the first sheet, and count the motivators. To help you out there, the letters for the motivators are, if you want to jot these down over there on the first worksheet, B, D, F, I, and J. Those are the motivators. How many of those did you have among the first 5 on worksheet number 7? Write that number in the indicated blank on worksheet 11. That would be for me. For me. Write the number of motivators there in that blank. Okay? Is everybody with me? Turn now to the next worksheet and let someone in your group sort of keep a count and determine what your average for the group is on the number of motivators for yourself. You've got 7 in a group. Somebody just jot down the number of motivators each group had and then divide it by 7 to give you an average.
Do you want us to do it for self or as a group? For ourselves, as a group.
For yourself. We're still working on worksheet number 7. For yourself. 0? Okay. 2, 3. Okay, you know what you're doing? How many motivators do you have for yourself, Ernie? You got it. Yeah, you get an average. So you'll come out with a fraction most likely. Okay, now, if you got that, everybody got it? Turn over to the next worksheet, which is the one you did as a group. How many, look at group one up here. How many motivators does group one have for their workers?
Zero.
Zero is right. Okay. Turn to the appropriate worksheet. I believe it's 11, and by that blank, put a 0. What about group two? How many motivators did group two show for their workers? 2. I and L, right? Group 3, did you have any motivators for your workers? Huh?
No.
No? I don't see any. Okay, group 4. You have 1, right? Okay, put that in the blank. So let's see what we got.
Who won that?
Huh? Let's see what we got. Group 1, how many did you have for yourself on the average? 2. It averaged out to 2 even? Okay. And for your workers, you had 0. Group 2, how many did you have for yourself? 1.7. 1.7. And for your workers, you had 2. Okay. Group 3, how many did you have for yourself? 1.5. For your workers, 0. Group 4, how many did you have for yourself? 2.5. And for your workers, you had 1. What does all this mean? Who's the best group? You notice there is a pattern here. There's a tendency of a pattern. 3 of the groups indicated that the motivators were more important to them than they were to the workers. 3 groups felt like the motivators were more important to themselves than they were to their workers. 1 group here went against the grain, and although it was pretty close, they were the opposite. As a matter of fact, the 3 groups there fall in line precisely with what is typical. Most managers feel that those motivators are important to them are not as important to their workers. What does that mean? What does that mean?
What motivates us should motivate them.
Well, I'll tell you what I think it means, myself. In my opinion, it means that we as managers underestimate our abilities to motivate our people. Now, why would I say that? Let's look closer at these motivators and these satisfiers and see if you can tell me what is the basic differences between them. There's some very significant differences between these 2 groups of factors. Now, we all agree, I think, that both groups are very important, don't we? But what are the differences? Who can tell us? I want to hear you. Say again. All right, point 1. Typically, we must satisfy before we can motivate, to a certain degree. To a certain degree. And I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but basically, you've got to provide some reasonable level of pay and working conditions and so forth to keep people reasonably satisfied. What is the main purpose for pay? From an organizational viewpoint, what's the main purpose for pay? No, well, I'm talking about the pay, wages, the money that goes out to the employees. What is the benefit to the organization for that money? it keeps people on the job, right? You quit paying, you got nobody, right? Very quickly. So the purpose for pay is to keep people satisfied enough so they'll come to work every day. It's to satisfy. Same thing for fringe benefits. Okay, a good point. What are some more differences, comparisons that we can make between these lists of satisfiers and motivators? Look at them and see what you think. What do you think? What do those satisfiers have in common that are different from the motivators, and vice versa?
Motivators are more threatening to manage.
Okay, the motivators are more threatening to management. What do you mean by that, Bill?
Well, sometimes we don't like other people to help us with our decisions. Maybe the juicy, difficult tasks we want to keep for ourselves. Opportunity for advancement, there could be some
Okay, so you're saying
there.
that for a manager to use the motivators could be threatening to him.
Well, they could cause problems.
Could cause
with
problems.
other employees.
Okay, good point. What else? What else? Ah, yes. Yes. Notice that the satisfiers tend to be tangible types of things. Money, fringe benefits, working conditions, relationships with coworkers. Tangible types of things that you can see, touch, feel. Right? What about the motivators? They tend to be what? Good point. Yeah, they tend to be intangible, don't they? Things that you can't see, touch, and feel. Good point. What else? What's another difference? Anybody? Did you notice that the satisfiers tend to be those things that are separated somewhat from the actual work itself, from the actual doing of the work? You notice that? Look at them. The satisfiers don't seem to be that close to the actual work. Isn't that right? Whereas the motivators are involved with the work itself. The actual activities that's going on related to that job. Is that right? So then motivators occur in the head pretty much, and motivators are the results of the values that we place on what we do as individuals. You hear that? Motivators result from the values that we place on what we do as individuals. That's what's motivating. There's another important difference in these factors. Can anybody spot it? And this gets to how we actually use these things. You're a manager. You're trying to decide, how can I increase the performance of my people? You're looking at these factors. Isn't it true that managers have really more control over the motivators, don't they? You have very little control about setting pay, don't you? And the fringe benefit program is not part of your responsibility. Is that right? What about the motivators? Look at those. Can you have a say-so on whether that employee has an opportunity to participate in decisions that are important to him? Can you have any say-so in that? What about the challenge of a difficult task? Can you have an impact there? Opportunity for advancement, maybe. Incentive pay, that's a little different. Interesting non-routine task. Yes, in general, managers have more control over the motivators and less control over the satisfiers. The fact of the matter is, in most organizations, the satisfiers are pretty well handled, aren't they? They're pretty well met. There may be some little grumblings here and there, and people want a little more of this and that. But basically, the satisfiers are met in most organizations in this country, aren't they? I know there are exceptions. Do you feel that the satisfiers are pretty well handled at Ara Automotive? Sure, I know you'd love to have more fringe benefits and what have you. Who wouldn't? But compared with most other organizations in there, you're right in the ballpark. The motivators, then, are the area in which you have an opportunity to make a difference. You know, if you look at them again, I believe there's one of those that's perhaps the most important of all the motivators, and the reason I think it's the most important, or one of them, is because it's the least used and it has the potential for the most impact. Which do you think it is? Which do you think is the most important? Yes, I agree with you, Bill. Bill says the opportunity to participate in work decisions. Now, there's an area that we can use to increase the performance of our people. Now, I don't mean turn the plant over to the employees by any means. And I understand there are many situations and constraints where you're not able to allow participation of the employees. But where it is feasible, you have only to gain from involving your employees in those decisions that are important to them. It's free. It's pretty easy to do in certain situations. And you will gain from it more than you can dream. Participation, I believe, is a key factor. These are not all the motivating factors. There are several others that are important, which we could mention and perhaps should, providing recognition and so forth. How well are you using these factors in increasing the performance of your people? Grade yourself mentally. Look at these factors. If we had the time, and we don't, I would ask you to come together as a group and discuss this as a group. But let's do it mentally just for a couple of minutes where you sit, looking at worksheet number 12. How much is this motivator being used with my workers? Answer that question for each of those motivators, and then think of how you might get more use out of that motivator. Concentrate on that first one, I think. You're not going to have time to complete this, but I want you to start on it. Okay, you've had time to gather your thoughts, and if you will, does anybody have a particular point that has come to your mind about some suggestions on how You could use these motivators. Let's hear from somebody. What has worked well for you? What have you done that you got some good results from by using some of these factors? Or what are some things that you're doing in the organization as a whole? Anybody have any suggestions you could share with us? Francis? What are you doing in your area to use these?
The only thing I do in my area is get people involved in what's not only their job, but other people's jobs and my job too. You know, record keeping and we have one job in there is kind of difficult, it's R&R. What we do is rebuild and return in a short period of time a unit to a customer and let them have some decisions, you know, working with that and getting the product back to the customer in good quality in that area.
Okay. We could list all types of things that we could do. Quality circles, you've heard that's the going thing now. There's many things that can be done. I know you have round tables on a regular basis, don't you? How is that working? You know where you know what I'm talking about. How is that working? Is it working or not? I see some interesting expressions. I'm not sure I'm reading them right. Somebody tell us.
It'd be hard to explain that because we're excluded from the meeting, you know, it's held by open business, and it's hard for us to tell the reaction of it except the guy that's conducting the roundup.
Good point. Okay.
Don, we do get some feedback from employees, whether some of the questions is asked. And I think a lot of things positive is happening out there. You get some things fixed that maybe you couldn't get fixed. That's what I get a lot of positive things.
Okay. Turn over, if you will, to worksheet 13. Check yourself there and see if you're gaining the main points that we've gone over in this exercise by filling in those blanks for us. Okay, let's see how you did. What's the answer to number 1? People tend to behave in ways that lead to what? Don't be bashful. What do you got? You can only be right or wrong, so. What you got, Bill?
I got satisfaction.
Okay.
Success.
Success. Words that are saying about the same thing. Rewards. How about rewards? People tend to behave in ways that lead to rewards. Number 2, rewards are motivating factors, can be divided into 2 categories. What are they? The 2 categories we've been working with. What are they? Satisfiers and motivators, right. Look at 4. Do adequate satisfiers lead to high production? No. Number 5. When blank are present, high production is likely. Motivators, thank you. 6. Probably the most neglected of all motivators is participating in work decisions. Yes. Thank you, Jim. Okay. How'd you do? Did you make 100? Huh? In this session, fellows, we have looked at some of the positive ways, some things that we can do to improve motivation among our people. We've stayed away from a lot of theory, and we've looked at a few practical things you might do. Okay? At this time, I want you, if you will, I'd like for everybody to find a place to set your notebook down and your materials and stand up. Get yourself some arm's length distance from your neighbor, and let's stretch. I get the opportunity to move about, and you don't. Everybody stand up. Get you some room, and look up here at me. I want everybody up. Everybody stretching up like this. Come on, everybody. Get up on your toes. Oh, that hurts. Get up there. That feels good. Come on. Okay. That's good. All right, do this. Do this like this. Just don't hit anybody with your elbow. Here's one I like. Do this. Push. Put your hands out like this, and then push against them and go up. Feel that? Go all the way up. Push. Huh? Okay. All right, do this. Does that feel good? Huh? Is she? Yes, she is. Recording this for history. Oh, that feels good. Now, everybody bend over. Everybody bend over and touch your knees. Right. Huh?
I think you didn't say toes because I can't do it.
Oh, okay. Feel better? No. All right, if you will, go back to your original seat. The groups have been temporarily disbanded, and let's move on. Skill number 1. If we're going to deal with performance problems, let's look at a very specific, simple, straightforward method for analyzing that performance problem. You'll find in a sheet there with a title on it related to performance analysis. That's the sheet that you'll need. It'll be in the blue section. What's an example of a performance problem? Remember we had a list of them? We need to decide which one we want to use to work with as a sample to demonstrate these techniques. These are some things that you said your people were doing that they shouldn't, or vice versa. Wasting time, asking excessive time off the job. You like that one? Okay. Everybody like that one? Fine. Well, let's use that then. Number 3. Let's call that being away from the workstation too much or something. Yeah, excessive time off the job. And that's a good one. The reason I like that is specific. This one up here, I'm sure, occurs, but what we need to do with that is ask the question, what are they doing to waste time? Sometimes someone will mention as a performance problem such things as poor quality. Is poor quality a performance problem? Is it? Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, think so. Isn't poor quality really the result of some kind of performance problem? Huh? Too often times, if we have a problem, we're really not discussing the problem, but the results of it. What we need to do is specify specific things that are going on out there that may be causing the results that we don't want, right? So I'd rather see poor quality as a result of some specific performance problem. Step number 1 in analyzing performance, then, identify the unsatisfactory performance. You know, some managers I run into have the all-seeing, all-knowing disease. You ever seen anybody like that? You ask them, what's the problem out there, and immediately they know exactly what the situation is. I know the problem over there. It's Joe. He's so-and-so. When I hear that, a little red flag goes up for me, a little warning saying, we better look a little further. A lot of times, the actual problem is not as obvious as you might think. Okay. Let's assume you've identified the specific problem. What do you want to do next? You know exactly what the problem is. I'd ask that question right there. Is it worth my time to get involved in this particular area? Is it worth my time? I heard of a case once where a sales manager was threatening to fire one of his best salesmen because the guy didn't like to wear a vest when he went out on a call. And one of the regulations of the organization was that you wear vests, or the regulation of this manager. It took a lot of convincing before that manager agreed that perhaps the vest was not really a factor in what? In the performance of that individual. It wasn't affecting his sales at all. Is it worth your time? How do you ask that question? You measure it against this. To what extent is it affecting performance? That's how you measure it. Oftentimes, Ralph may be a problem, not because of what he's doing, but because Ralph and I don't see things the same way, you see? And maybe it's irritating to me. Is what Ralph's doing affecting performance, or is it just something that is a little irritating to me. Decide how you want to spend your time. Yes, sir.
Do I have to ask a question?
Sure. But at any time, interrupt me at any time, please. I should have said that earlier.
You got an employee, I want to give you a situation.
Okay.
You got an employee that's doing 625 units a day. We got breaks, 10 minutes. It's allowed 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But he's doing 625 a day.
Is that good or bad?
That's good, that's 25 more than what he's supposed to.
Okay.
This employee stays 15 minutes in the break room. But his performance, 625 a day.
Mm-hmm.
You got an employee that goes exactly by the rules and he does 585.
Uh-huh. It's a tough one. Your question then is, what do you do? Hmm? Talk to both. What are you going to say to them? Mm-hmm. 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 Okay.
But I'm the employee doing 625. I do 600 now.
You do 600 now. What happened? You got